I'm Brad Hutchings. You're watching the Break It Down show with Pete
That
Turner.
is right. Yeah. It took a little bit of a hiatus. I'm working on trying to get my eyeballs fixed because they kind of don't work. It's funny. This and this, barely any difference at all. So let's not even go glasses. And also got some middle-aged plumbing checks done and a bunch of other travel. So appreciate everybody hanging out, taking a week off with me as I explored the life of Pete Turner, trying to get things done. So Brad, thanks for coming on the show. And thanks for being you, man. And I appreciate everything that you do. We've been talking a long time about AI. And as everybody falls in love with AI and starting to understand what it's going to do in their lives, you and I have been pretty resilient and pretty consistent with checking it and being, I don't know, the skeptic's advocate, where we want this thing to work, but let's also understand what the limits are. And one of the things we know, the part of the limitations are logic, memory, facts, math. These are all things that limit what AI is. How's my list?
Privacy.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
fair enough. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So when we look at those things and you look at solutions, let's be a little positive today and let's talk about, what is working. We saw the Chinese come in with DeepSeek and how they've kind of said, hey, you're trying too hard. Let's just, here, and you're going to get the same kind of answers. And you've talked about private, personal, what I'm calling paid services, personal, private AI devices, or maybe it's private, personal, paid. And it's the funny thing when you get to name stuff in the tech world, you get to be silly, like ASCII or any of these things. And so we're going to purposely program in a little stutter, and that's for the folks that either grew up with or have a stutter, so paid.
I'm paid. Yeah, just pay the man.
Yeah.
I like it.
So let's talk about this.
Yeah, let's talk about this. I think I told you about AI appliances. This is what I've been calling them. I hate the word artificial intelligence. I hate the phrase. We are talking about generative models, large language models. One of the things I've been showing for a year is people can run these large language models or smaller versions of them on their own PCs. And this has taken off with people who are technical like me and can wade through all the technical things. And of course, I've tried a few times with you to get you up to pace where you could do it. And no knock on you, Pete, but we still haven't got that done. And so it's been sitting in the back of my mind. Why is this such a difficult problem? Because it shouldn't be, to me, it shouldn't be a difficult problem. I was able to, from not knowing anything about this to getting it running on my laptop, I was able to do that it was a couple weeks, right?
Why don't we ask the AIs?
Yeah, why don't we? The AIs have no idea what to do. And so what I have been thinking is maybe it's not that it runs on your laptop, but maybe it's that it runs on a little appliance computer that's in your house. And you just plug it in and you hook it up to your network. And then all of a sudden this is available to all of your devices. And so that's something that I've been working toward as I've been working on, making LLMs run on people's PCs, but I've been working toward that. And there's a few things that I've been waiting for. Number one is, do we have devices that are inexpensive enough and can run the models? So there's this thing called a Raspberry Pi 5 with 16 gigs of RAM. You can get the kit for like $150 right now. And it's powerful enough to run really small models. Well, the problem was the really small models would just spit gibberish at you. So you give it a question and it just goes like it's linguistically correct gibberish, but it's mostly gibberish. One of the cool things that happened last week, and of course you mentioned DeepSeek. DeepSeek was like the big meteor that hit AI, a month ago. But last week, what's gone totally unnoticed is that Google of Black George Washington Google released their Gemma models, and their new Gemma models version 3, the small ones are actually very capable. So a 1 billion parameter model, this is like the thing that mostly was gibberish before, actually can write a very nice story for me in English. It can also give me any recipe I want for my air fryer, adjusted to my air fryer. It can tell me how HVAC works, Remember a while back, I was encouraged by our friend George to figure out HVAC and save $10,000, and so I did, right, with the help of a large language model. It found 100 ways to explain it to me, and those helped me develop a good understanding of it. So we're at the point where a 1 billion parameter model that can run on a $150 device can give really, really good answers. Now, if I wanted stories that are in multiple languages like French or Hindi or whatever else, I could use the Gemma 4 billion parameter model, and it makes wonderful stories in all these languages. And it could probably answer most of the household questions you might have. So what are you hoping to get from LLMs?
It's funny that you say recipes, because we're old enough to remember the clone PC. And like, why ever would I need one of these things in my house with this monochromatic? If you got a fancy gold monochromatic, wow, that's super neat. But the gray, green, or gold, depending on your era and your company, clone PC was going to help you with storing all your recipes. That was one of the things it was going to do. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Like, it was one of the things. Hey, moms, it's going to be great. You sit there on your computer and counter, and you'll type in, broccoli and gravy, and then all of a sudden it would tell you. You wouldn't have to remember all that crap, right? And so here we are again, and this is not making fun. This is how legitimately, like, they were trying to explain this thing that we hadn't needed. Like, one of my friends, his dad was into ham radio, and look, we grew up in California, in a certain part of California where a lot of this stuff was being born. And so he was a ham radio guy, and he connected a lot to Cupertino. And so he knew the guy that invented the mouse. And so when they were prototyping mice, you got to get them into people's hands. And so Terry Lang, right down the street from me, he had one of these things. And this is a guy who had a velvet painting of his wife, half naked, scantily clad, with the boobs stuck out. A guy that could put his hands on a car and turn it into something beautiful. He could join metal. But this guy also loved computers. I'm going on this whole long thing to say we've been trying to sell these things and help us figure out how to use them for a long time. So this is just a different era of the same thing. And to me, it feels like another frontier that we're breaking into. And so when we talk about AI in our house, and you're saying, hey, you don't have to go look up Bobby Flay's recipes. Just ask me and I'll tell you one right now for this thing, customized to your air fryer, whatever it is. By the way, I looked up a paid on Grok. I said, reference Brad Hutchings' work, and I gave Grok the first time, and it's like, fuck no. You mean talking about this insurance program? And it didn't know. I said, all right, fair enough. Let's not cheat too much here. And so I wrote down private, personal, artificial intelligence device, and I'll be damned, it came pretty close to describing it, right? Once I gave it enough information, which is pretty incredible. All right, I'm shutting up about that.
That's wonderful. So my first big commercial product that put money in my pocket was called Ham Windows, and it was for ham radio operators, and it was marketed by Kenwood USA back in the early 90s.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I know the ham radio. I didn't know anything about ham radio. Hooked up with this guy who was an early computer industry pioneer, and he had me write the software, and we did amazing things back then. So yes, I mean, this is sort of the spirit of things. Recipes. The best sales guy I ever worked with, he was a Vietnam veteran, and he's about 20 years older than we are. And we went on the sales call, and he told, it was a disaster sales call, right? And he told me after we left, he was like all calm. I was like pissed off because like, what a waste of an afternoon, right? And he goes, Brad, 20 some odd years ago, I think this was 30 years at that point, he was going through the rice paddies with radio gear on his back. He said, there is no sales call that's as bad as that. And that gave me all the perspective I needed on sales for like my whole career.
True.
Right.
It's so true.
You
think about this. There are fun ways to jump out of an airplane, and there are military ways to jump out of an airplane. Right. Any day, jumping out of an airplane, and the airborne people love it, right? But the God's honest truth is that people get fucked up doing that every single day. Every single jump, someone gets like a career-defining injury, right? Yeah. And so you're not doing that, and that's just jumping out of an airplane at low altitude, low speed with a parachute that's only supposed to slow you down so you don't die.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the point about this guy. Besides the excellent sales advice that he gave me, and the perspective that I got from him is after we were done with that company, he went off and created this recipe manager software, which was basic. This is the mid 2000s. It was
Yeah.
basically this giant database of all the recipes in the world. And here's the amazing thing right now is for 20 years, that's the kind of thing you've bought if you were into cooking and you wanted to cook all sorts of things. But with these
Right.
large language models, I can ask it to take a classic recipe, adapt it
Mhm.
to my air fryer, and it usually does a pretty good job. And for those
Yeah.
of you who don't know what an air fryer is, it's it's
Oh, people know
basically
what an air fryer is.
a hot plate
Yeah.
with a fan in an enclosed area that looks like an oven and a little electronic control. And you can cook
Right.
all sorts of great things with it without heating up your kitchen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it can adapt recipes. Like I ask it, drop biscuits
Yeah.
in an air fryer. It'll give me drop biscuits in an air fryer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the neat thing about what the time that we're in. I got to change my light a little bit. It's a little too hot. A little too hot. So what I wanted to ask you about was
Yeah.
when we look at AI and putting it in
Uh-huh.
our house, and I know we're big on the personal private thing. Let's talk a little bit about the scariness of this. So like we're already kind of like, oh, let's be a little bit afraid of this. Reasonable.
Right.
And also like when you see robots doing things jointly and they're like, command other robots, like I didn't tell it to do that. And that really happens, that kind of stuff makes us nervous about this. So when you talk about the protection of private AI, what does that look like versus going to look, and we're all fans of Grok and Gemma and all these other things. I'm not talking about bad about those, but why would you want to keep your stuff private? And what does that look like?
Say I'm writing a book or I'm writing a song or something like that. What do I need to know about burying a body? And I ask Grok or ask Chat GPT, and now suddenly that's up in the cloud. Maybe it's filtered, maybe it's sent to a law enforcement agency or
Paging
something
Cat
like that.
Connor, by the way.
Yeah, hey, I see all these stories about fentanyl, people dying from fentanyl. I ask,
Yeah.
how much fentanyl does it take to kill somebody?
Yeah.
Does that trigger, some sort of a public response to my question? There are all sorts of
How about
things that,
I want to do an example now. I'm a burgeoning technical writer, and I'm going to use AI to my example. And Maytag is like, sure, why don't you draw an instruction manual for our brand new Maytag 5000 and get back to us. And I use AI for that, and I upload the schematics that they give me, and holy shit, now I've just put Maytag's information up into the cloud.
yeah, you put it, I mean, they can guarantee that they're not going to do anything nefarious with it, but what they can't guarantee is that somebody's not going to hack in and steal that data. We've had all sorts of problems with that. Amazon's had problems with that with AWS.
OPM.
Sure.
Do you know about this break? Let me check. This is the thing, right? Here, and this is to your point. OPM, Office of Personnel Management, has a software system that you pound all your information. It's archaic. You pound all your.
Yeah.
One time I got arrested in Mexico because the federales are corrupt, and I paid them a bribe to get out. You have to put that in there, right? Because if you ever get polyed and they ask you, you've been arrested in Mexico, you got to be like, of course. I wrote that on my thing. And so all of your secrets, all of your family, everybody, your money, every time you bounce the check, all these things go into this machine. And, and thankfully you don't have to write it by hand every single time you do it anymore. Like, because then you get this like, oh my God, it's a huge thing. It's great that it's on a computer, except for the Chinese broke into it back in the early 2000s. I couldn't access my own stuff because the army locked me out of my own stuff, but the Chinese could see it. How funny is that? And so this is something we're desperate to protect, right? This is how you prevent people from being exploited by people like me. And we put that information. So if that can't be protected, what can, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and God forbid somebody comes along with nefarious purposes and puts an AI up and they're collecting data on people or whatever else.
Right.
So the point is if your questions don't get out to the cloud, then nobody knows what they are. Nobody can take action against you for that. And, with a private AI, what we're trying to do is not have any logs, not have any trail of accountability. Anything one of the really interesting things, Amazon announced that their Echo and Alexa customers are not going to be able to keep their what they say to it local anymore after some day at the end of March. That everything that you say can and will be used against you in the cloud. It'll be moved up there. It'll be dealt with up there. Any data that's available is potentially subpoenaable. Let's say you had some some conversation on the phone about, defrauding your wife from her bank account or something like that. You get into a divorce suit, and some lawyer is
Right.
going to figure out how to subpoena that data, and
Yeah.
because it's there. Whereas if it's not there, if it's not recorded, you're can't be subpoenaed, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
kind of thing to think about as well. If you're producing
Yeah.
all this data, someday it could be used against you.
Right. Yeah. And I guess if you take it like you're a completely innocent person, haven't committed a crime, but you've, had a conversation, like maybe you're trying to work out a book, maybe you're a burgeoning but ultimately
Yeah,
failed writer, you know, and you haven't done anything wrong. And you're like, how do you plan the perfect murder? Right.
yeah.
You
Pete,
fill this in
Brave New World in 1984 are not blueprints. Okay, they are warnings,
there.
right? What do you have to hide? Yeah, I have a lot to hide. You have a lot to hide. We all have a lot
Yeah.
to hide. Some guy
And
wrote a
yeah,
some guy
even if you
wrote a
don't,
book.
it's just your
Oh,
shit.
sorry.
It's not anybody
Yeah,
else's shit, right? So if you have these things that you do that aren't harming anybody and that are about your world and things you do, I'm not talking anything bad, anything. It's still your own private person,
right.
right? And it's funny how we're struggling with the law, and I say we're struggling because we don't know, and these cases are going to keep coming up. Like when you extract someone's DNA and
Mm-hmm.
put it on the board and say that's this person. How'd you get the DNA? Well, I found it in the trash. I pulled it off their cup. And then lawyers are saying, and they're not winning this, but sometimes these things change. There'll be like a certain case, be like, that's the line right there. Wait, we haven't found the line. But you can say, but that's me. How can I testify against myself? That's me. That DNA is me. So,
Yeah.
maybe my words, not so much, maybe my AI, not so much, but we are struggling with when does me stop, and something evidence start. And it's real tough. And if we're going to put a bunch of stuff up in the web, client stuff, our own stuff, yeah, for sure, it's
I
exploitable.
I do know there's a book that was popular 25 years ago, maybe, and it was called Five Felonies a Day or Six Felonies a Day or something like that. And that
Yeah,
basically, if you hooked a felony monitor onto anybody and let them
all the
walk
time.
around during the day, that's what they would average. And that's like scientifically validatable data. That's
Yeah,
not just
yeah,
somebody pulling some number out of their butt. It's like you could be indicted for lots of things you do every day. You have no idea that you're doing something wrong. And if
right.
somebody's recording it and that's what they want to do, well, that's what they can do. So why contribute to being recorded committing your 5 or 6 or 100 felonies a day? Why do
Yeah,
that? Keep it to yourself.
yeah.
Keep it
Keep it to yourself. All right. So we get this system set up, and it's going to be in our house. It's going to be private and personal,
mm-hmm,
but on our network, right? And
mm-hmm.
so, what does that look like? What are the mechanics of the machinations of this machine?
So let me turn the camera and I'll show you.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
So there's
Okay.
a living room. There's a living
Hmm.
room TV. This has changed a
Yeah.
bit since the last time you were here, by the way. We've
Okay.
got
That's true.
angles and stuff. Over here, there's this little black box in the corner.
Hmm.
That
Okay.
is that is a Raspberry Pi computer.
Okay.
That's about 150 bucks. That is hooked up. The white cable from it is a power cable, and
Okay.
there's a black cable from it, and that is HDMI to the TV.
Okay.
You'll plug this into your TV and you'll configure it once. It'll take you, if you know what you're doing, it'll take you maybe 5 minutes to get on your network, and then, maybe another 5 minutes to decide which model you want to run. And then
Hmm.
you just let it, you turn it off, that TV connection, back to your cable box or your Chromecast or whatever you watch TV on. And
So
you
yeah.
just,
So help me out with this. Why is it
yeah.
tethered to the TV?
Well, it's
What is
tethered
the
to the TV
purpose?
because at some point you might want to configure it. Okay.
Okay.
So I have it tethered to the TV, and I actually have here's a little dedicated keyboard for it. But
Okay.
you could get a keyboard that has a trackpad built in, so it's real
Hmm.
simple and real easy to get to if you need to. And it's tethered there so that you could do some configuration on it if you ever needed to. Not that you'd ever need to. You
So it doesn't
shouldn't need
have
to.
to be. It can be just on my kitchen counter if I wanted it to be. It
Could be on your
It
kitchen
doesn't
counter if you
need the
wanted it to
TV.
be. It
Right.
doesn't, but
Okay.
if you do need to configure it or you want to set it up or you want to customize it, yes, you're going to need it hooked up to a monitor, and yes, you're going to need some sort of a keyboard and a mouse.
Okay.
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 So
Yeah.
here's the thing, that little kit there, somebody who's a, kind of a computer nerd like me, I know how to source that. I know how to buy everything I need, how to connect it all and eventually make it all work. And then because I know how this AI stuff works. I know how to get the open source software, install it, make it run when the thing starts up, all that other stuff. But you who just wants this thing working in your house probably don't know how to do that. It would be a tremendous waste of days of your life to figure that out, to get to my competence in doing that. So what I would like to do is I would like to gather all those parts, stick them in a box, mail it to you with a couple of pages of instructions, and then maybe a Zoom call if we've got to do some little custom stuff and train you on it and stuff, and then let you go with it. And you could actually do that. But that would not be a terribly difficult task for you.
Whenever you talk about these kinds of things in general, not you, but anybody, I think about one of the first things I learned from a sergeant major in the Army, and it was you got to be portable, mobile, deployable, right? And I'm like, those are all the same thing. And he's like, no, portable means you can carry your shit around. And you're going to carry your office with you, right?
Yes.
And mobile is you can actually move around, so like that, not just whatever, right? And deployable is like, can you leave this area and go somewhere? And these are all different things. So how do I get portable, mobile, deployable all together? Like if I've got a truck and I'm going to go to a construction site and I'm going to need to do some work, and AI is how I do it, instead of going home and doing invoices and pitches and all that stuff I've got to do. How do I take this, and can I take this in the field with me?
So you absolutely can. And so the way that you typically do that is you need some sort of an internet connection. So what's becoming very popular with people with a truck or whatever else, put a Starlink receiver up on the top of your truck. That's real easy. Another popular thing is like a T-Mobile or Verizon 5G. What is it? What do they call it?
Hotspot?
Wireless hotspot.
Hotspot.
You can do that from you can do it from your phone, or you can actually have like they have the home units, or even things that you can go from place to place with that are not terribly difficult to install in your car. You install that. You don't need view of the sky for that. You just need view of a tower, basically, right? So,
but if you have a signal like with your regular phone, you don't need Starlink necessarily. Is that right?
That's right. I'm just giving you two options for going, being robustly
portable and mobile.
Portable and mobile. Okay. So I think as long as you can see the sky, I think Starlink's actually going to be like your best option, probably your most cost effective, and your most wherever you are, it's going to work. So probably most robust option right now. Now, Starlink it's still early with it, right? So there aren't a lot of experts with it. Your mobile hotspot is probably what you deploy today if you're relying on other people's expertise to get that done. Okay.
But you're doing a hotspot or that because you need the Wi-Fi. Could you use cell tower stuff, and would it still be secure?
I think the point is regardless, you need it on your local network is what you need. And so what each of these, what a hotspot does or Starlink does is it provides you a local wireless network. And so all the devices that are on that local wireless network can talk to each other, but outside devices can't get to them unless you configure that device, that hotspot or that Starlink to let those things in. And even then, it's kind of dicey. So you keep it private to that local Wi-Fi network. That's what's important there. So
you could. And I'm using construction just because you might find yourself, look, there's in Orange County, there's pockets where there's bad coverage for anything, right? And so you're doing that. And then again, going back to the whole thing. So if I'm using Copilot now or Gemma or Grok or whatever it's going to be, you're saying, hey, keep this private, use your own little wireless network and do that work there. And so if I'm doing this on my laptop, can I plug my paid device into my laptop and go, now I'm going to use my AIs to make my proposal and then walk back into the house with a proposal?
Yeah. So you do need a private network that you're on, right? Because it's a network situation. Now, if you're just taking your laptop out to wherever, this is where I'm going to say you run the AI on your laptop. Okay. If you're taking your laptop and phones and whatever else, and you can lug along a sort of a private network with you, then this would be a great solution for that. Sure.
Okay. So you don't need to bring, you can load the paid device. Actually, it can just be your laptop. You don't have to actually.
Yeah, you don't have to have a paid device. But the
Okay.
paid device is nice because then you don't have to set up every laptop, every phone with all this software. That's
Right.
the
Right. Right.
nice thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it, I'm sort of learning about this as you're talking about it.
Hmm.
And when you're thinking about, like, let's say you're going to go to a conference. You're in Las
Hmm.
Vegas, and you need to work on your presentation. You can just
Hmm.
sit down wherever you want with your laptop and do this, just like you could with Grok or Gemma or anything
Hmm.
else,
Hmm.
and improve that thing. But now you're not compromised by having to give your stuff to X or Google or whoever it's going to be.
Right, right. That's my old solution, is bring it all with you on your laptop, and
Yeah,
that's a good solution for that kind of thing. What the paid device is for is, if I install this once in my house and
yeah,
leave it on, now everything that comes into my house and uses my network, whether it be somebody's phone, somebody's tablet, somebody's laptop, they can get on that thing and they can get good LLM information that
right, right.
that's probably good enough for what they're doing.
Thanks for playing with me on the paid, and we shouldn't say device because then it's
Yeah,
device device, but
right. It's an ATM machine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So uh, it's fun to be able to do that. I appreciate you hanging out with that. But let's go back to the in-home paid system, and we are going to do something with it. Whether we are doing, and I know you're big on this, like, hey, have your generative algorithm invent a story that you
Mm-hmm.
read to your kids or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What am I holding in my hand to see that story so I
Your
can read it
tablet.
to my kids?
Your
Okay,
tablet.
tablet. Okay,
We
okay.
might, once you've got this device and it can act as an LLM server,
Uh huh.
we can write very lightweight custom applications that are just dedicated to writing stories. Right.
Yeah.
Right now, the way I've been showing this is doing this all in your browser and using browser tools and whatever else. But we could write application specific things.
Yeah.
One of the things, like I talked about recipes before. So yesterday I actually got the Raspberry Pi running this Gemma and running it fast enough that I could try this out. But I was in the
Uh huh.
kitchen, I had my phone with me. I did not have to go back and get a laptop in order to get a recipe. I just pulled out my phone. Yes, the
Uh
UI
huh.
isn't perfect for phones yet, but
Uh
I browsed with Chrome on the phone to my little device. I told it I wanted the drop biscuits for the air fryer, and 20 seconds later, I've got the full recipe of drop biscuits for the air fryer. And you know what? If it wasn't right, if I could tell this isn't going to work, I just hit reload and let it do it again, and
Right.
it'll eventually give me something that works.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
We, I just want to back up a little bit. We get afraid of AI,
Uh
and
huh.
I'm saying AI. We'll just call them generative algorithms, but they
Yep.
have jumped forward rather rapidly in the last year. I mean, the ability to reliably put a picture out has, I would say, like I don't know, octupled. I mean, it was
Yeah.
before you get like 4 eyeballs on someone. A lot of that isn't as present. There's still you still see weird ones every now and
Right.
then, but before it was like you had to look to see. It was like, can you find the error? Like a game you might play at a bar. You put a
Yeah.
quarter in, and you're like,
Yeah.
there it is, there.
So Pete, to
But
be clear,
yeah,
we're talking about text here right now. We're not
text.
talking
Okay,
about pictures
okay,
right now. Pictures
yeah,
that's going to take a lot more data, which is going to be more expensive to have just on a computer in your home.
right, right,
Uh, and frankly, you don't have to give up as much information to a system like Grok or OpenAI or whatever else in order
yeah.
to get a picture that probably meets your needs. For instance, I don't know if you used the picture that I
I
made
did,
you.
I
Okay,
did.
so
Yeah,
that picture, the idea there is it's a family gathered around the back of their TV, and there's a toaster, an appliance taped to the back of their TV. And
right.
that's supposed to be sort of a funny view of what this paid is. By the way, paid, Pete just dropped that on me at the beginning of the conversation. It's absolutely brilliant what he came up with. But this is how much, like we've been talking about this, and he'll just, we're going live on Break It Down show, and Pete will just come up with something, and it is brilliant, and I'll roll with it. Yeah, so they're gathered around here, and this is an appliance that is on the back of their TV, and that's pretty much, how this thing works too. I
Yeah,
did
yeah,
mention this thing costs me about $150 to make. So I would
yeah.
make a box. I would throw the things in the box. I would send it to you for $200. We'd have a Zoom call where I help you set it up and stuff. And
Yeah.
then you've got this appliance running on your machine that does text AI for most of the things you need to do. If
Yeah.
you wanted a more powerful model, I would
Mhm.
send you a Mac Mini. Now, Mac Mini I can't
Mhm.
get for $200. That costs about $500. So maybe we're talking about
Mhm.
$600 or $650 to be all configured, have everything you need, including double stick tape pad to stick it on the back of your TV, right? And the right
Mhm.
length cables to stick, so you don't have a giant cable mess on the back of
Right.
like I've got right now because I haven't taped it. But everything you need to just make this thing easy to use, to plug in and forget about it and just use it as you need to.
Is this something that really can help you day to day in your work? Like if you're interested in AI helping you in your work, are you saying get the paid system from Brad Hutchings and go, or is it good enough just to look? I mean, I'll just put you on the spot on this. Is
Yeah.
it good enough just to use Grok? I mean, if you don't want to pay for Grok, use Gemma, and if you don't want to pay for that or go to Google, you go to
Yeah, well,
Copilot. And
those are
you,
the
you know, whatever.
cloud. Those are the cloud things, and those are privacy. If privacy is your concern, if you don't want to be measured and advertised to, or judged, or the police called because you asked about a recipe for meth, or
Mhm.
just because you were curious, whatever, I would say you want a private AI in your house.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
150 or $200 or whatever, I think that's a price that most people could afford to try it out. And if it doesn't work, well, just give it to somebody else or whatever else. It doesn't hurt you too much. If you need something more powerful, and there are more powerful models, then we're
Right.
talking about like a Mac Mini. You could spend $600-700 on this. It's the same system. It's just more powerful and costs more money. If you wanted to run like DeepSeek 70B, 70 billion parameters, which, frankly, people are running that and finding better results than they are with ChatGPT online,
Wow.
right? It's
Yeah.
just not a lot of people have got the capability to run that at home. Well, if you wanted to run
Mm.
that at home, you could buy a Mac Studio. You'll probably spend about $3,500 on that Mac Studio, the new Mac Studio, but it'll have
Uh-huh.
enough RAM. It could run a 70 billion parameter model really fast. So you could do that and you could run it at home. This is the thing about these appliances, is that they are scalable from simple and cheap to something that would certainly beat
Right.
ChatGPT 3 that we all fell in love with 2 years ago. You can do that in
Let
your
me
house right now.
I'm going to back up to the thing I was going to
Yeah,
back up about, because quite often we hear like, AI is going to kill us, robots and everything like that.
yeah,
Is
no.
AI is AI? I mean, look, we're trying to be practical advocates here, right? Like, what's
Hmm.
the real threat and danger here with AI today, currently, as we see it, and what do you think the threat is? 5 years, given how much we've changed in a year, what's it going to be in 5 years?
I think the biggest threat is believing the hype.
Uh-huh.
We've had a year of AI is going to take my job, and
Yeah.
certainly in some communities, creative communities, and in let's say software development, um, it's been treated as truth. Yeah, AI is going to take your job. Well, AI didn't take your job, but everybody thinking that AI is going to take your job meant that there were fewer jobs, because they said, well, why are we paying you when we could just wait for the next AI that can do what you
Uh-huh.
do? And it didn't happen. And we're starting to figure that out, right? That we
Yeah.
do need artists, we do need programmers, that it doesn't do these things, that the people who are promising this are full of beans, and
Uh-huh.
and they're being exposed as that. And things go on. So I think the worst outcome is that we believe the hype. The
Mm.
hype is not going to be realized by this generation of artificial intelligence technology,
Uh-huh.
just like it
Uh-huh.
hasn't been when we had expert systems, just like it hasn't been whatever was between expert systems and transformer
Right.
models, right? It's
Yeah. But
th-
looking back at further in time, we do have less people picking up and moving in buckets, human waste, for example. Jobs do get replaced, but then there are new jobs that come out from that, right? And so
yeah,
there was, and you remember this, like back when 60 Minutes ran its piece on automated welding machines in Japan and how it was going to
yeah,
change the auto industry. And it did. But there's still a fuck ton of people that work in an auto plant, and so we do
yeah. Or
have
we
these
have
things, right?
cars that have a whole bunch more welds, right? Because we
Right.
have that
Yeah.
capability to do it,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But
Safer cars too.
I think we're good at automating physical things. I think when we
Hmm.
try to automate thinking things, um, and I've been in really in automation, I would say for, 30 years that's
Yeah.
been a lot of what I do is automate things. Um, Automation breaks. It breaks faster
Mm.
than you can write it. You don't automate and forget. You automate and then you maintain. So you may replace 10 jobs automating something. But guess
Uh-huh.
what? You're going to create 10 jobs or 20 jobs maintaining your automation,
Right.
right? That's what
Right.
you're going to do. It moves things around. And
Yeah.
if you don't maintain it and it breaks, then somebody's got to go back and do it manually. And if you don't have those people who are capable of that, well, now you've lost capability. That happens all the
Yeah.
time in IT.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting, when we look at Doge and all of this stuff that's going on with that. We're not talking politics here. We're just talking
Mm-hmm.
about the application of this kind of thinking to a government system. This is two different worlds coming together.
Mm-hmm.
And we see a lot of what doesn't work with technology companies, like try to call
Mm-hmm.
someone on the phone. Oh no, we purposely don't let people do that. Can you send an email from this person internally in your company? Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have email. Like all these
Right.
kind of lies that come to you with these automated companies. And so, there is like a problem with that. And so you apply that principle to a government that has systems that are 50 years old within it that
Yeah.
work for the most part, right? We see a lot of clash with that. Are we going to see a similar new universe where we now have a different way of dealing with things and people because of AI? Like, are we going to be forced to change how we speak to people? And I mean, we're already seeing that if you want to commit a petty crime outside in the real world, and we'll just use keying a Tesla, it's a good chance you're going to get seen, whether it's on a Ring
Yeah.
camera or someone just taking a fucking video. You're like, hey, look at this. I'm looking at ice creams. And all of a sudden someone's like, and you're
Yeah,
like, I
if you
got
want to
the
steal Nikes from a store, you have to have you on camera, and then nobody will follow up. I mean, and we
right.
even
Yeah.
voted to have people follow up with that, and they're not doing it, right? So,
Yeah.
so there's that. I think Pete. I think there's this lie about automation that
Mm.
and it's a narrative lie. It's a big level lie, and I think the perfect example of it is X as a company. What was Twitter when Musk bought Twitter? The lie
Uh-huh.
is that he came in with a whole bunch of automation and replaced people. Okay. The
Mm.
actuality is that 90% of Twitter wasn't doing anything valuable and he got rid of, well, 80%, and he
Okay.
got rid of them. There's a lot of dead weight not doing anything valuable.
Yeah.
Pete, you and I have talked about this a lot, certainly in their sales process, and they're helping, like customers
Yeah.
like
They're
you, who are
god
who are
awful.
paying for things. They're god
Yeah.
awful. They were god awful before,
Yeah.
right? It's like it hasn't gotten worse. It's just god awful. So why not be, if you're
I
going to be
have
god awful,
yeah. I have a
if
story
you,
about that. They had
yeah,
this
yeah,
program where you could buy in for $100 a month and they would make
yeah,
you like a super user or whatever, right?
uh huh,
And so me and Scott Husing tried it, and we didn't know we'd each tried it. And then I said to him, I'm doing this thing on Twitter, and I'm just giving him $100 a month. Like there's nothing happening. And it wasn't like 1 month, no results. I'm like, it was month after month. And I'm like, what? Why am I doing this? Like I've got a budget for my business and I don't mind spending some money, trying some things out, but something has to be delivered. So you're right. Twitter has sucked for a long time
that was
and they don't know how to
pre-Elon
unsuck
Twitter.
themselves.
That was
Right.
pre-Elon Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked to
So,
Scott. He's like, same thing. He's like, let's both cancel. So we both canceled that program and then
right,
never heard from that program again. Never got like a, hey, what the fuck happened? Where'd you go? None of it. It was
right,
like literally just like, here's $100. And technology companies do suck at if you get the lucky break of establishing an audience for your product, they
uh huh,
suck at finding that next product. And we
yeah,
can do example after web TV. I mean, all the stuff that Facebook has tried. I mean, they're bad at new products.
yeah. So anyway, the lie being that we're actually automating anything. What we're doing is we're getting rid of dead weight. And by the way, that goes for the whole Doge thing too. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry to government workers. Okay.
Yeah.
You're at least just as bad as the private sector. And the private sector is showing right now that there is a lot of dead weight that was picked up and carried for some reason that it didn't need.
Right.
And public sector is at least as bad because there's no profit incentive. There's spend incentive.
Right.
So
Right.
it's the same thing. Now, we got to find work for people to do. We got to find meaningful things for people to do, both
Yeah.
for them to have, like fulfilling lives and, because That's how we all get wealthier, is people doing work that actually needs to be done. Yes, we've got to do that, but before we can do that, we got to clear the dead weight. There's a
Yeah.
lot of dead weight.
Yeah. Okay. So
AI
we're going to
doesn't
clear out.
AI is a nice excuse for this, but it's not what's
Right.
happening.
Yeah. And the one thing I would say about this is what seems to be happening when I've seen it, like in being studied in real time, is instead of cutting a person loose, there it's like, no, you need to be 20% more productive, because we know you don't have to work as hard on whatever it is creating this email. What used to take you
Yeah.
2 hours to craft, is now
Yeah,
taking a tenth of the time.
those
You
are
know?
those are the optimizers too. And the optimizers, when we realize that they're dead weight, that's going to be a great breakthrough. They are dead weight as well.
Yeah. Well, one of the people I know that is they're looking at doing this is they're using AI to examine medical readouts,
Uh-huh.
MRIs, CAT scans, etc. And the thought is that it can do a good enough job that it'll catch things that the doctor won't catch, but
Uh-huh.
also it'll just say, "Hey, alert! Pay attention. There's a problem here. We think it's a cancer." And then
Right.
that doctor can be like, "Yep." And so they can do more of these things because they spend less time going swiping right. Like they're going to spend more
Sure,
time doing the other.
that's the theory. And in
Yep.
practice, we have a study out of Australia very recently by an insurance company. Don't remember all the details of it, but the point was
Yeah.
that doctors were saddled with this. It meant that they had to take more time and their results were worse.
Right. Yeah.
How does that work out? It's like, wait, we gave them
Yeah.
all the tools to be better, and yet it took them more time and their results were worse. That's so weird.
Yeah. And I would say, this is Pete, the guy who doesn't know that much about technology, talking here, but if you allowed that doctor, if you focused on doctors that were good at bedside manner,
Uh-huh.
whenever that person who goes out into the person who fixed my ankle was wonderful. And I picked her specifically because she had her hand on my ankle and she listened to me and she
Hmm.
evolved what she thought my injury was because she heard me as I sat there and talked about this thing that's really, you know, it's a
Yeah.
heavy thing to have someone take apart your leg and put it back together again.
Yeah.
And she was very kind and warm and put her hand on my ankle and listened to me. And I was comfortable with that. The other person I talked to was, "Beep, I am a robot doctor. You aren't smart enough to know what questions to ask. You just show up on Tuesday. Don't eat.
Right.
Bye bye." And I'm like, "Fuck
There's a
no."
tech bulletin for your ankle, Pete.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy
Yeah.
read the tech bulletin for your ankle, of course.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is when I informed my doctor, and look, maybe it's all performance, right? But this is the whole point is
Hmm.
I said, also when the injury happened, I felt the pop back here and she spun my virtual ankle around, but you broke your ankle right there. I can see it now. And she
Hmm.
hadn't known that. Right. And so it wasn't because she was a bad doctor, because I had a complex destruction of my
Yeah.
ankle whenever I had it
Yeah.
broken. And the other guy did not even care to hear me. He was like impatient, like, "Shut up. I need to go do something else." And I would never want to go to that doctor because I was a problem that he knows how to fix already. And I've encountered people like that in the real world, and I don't want them cutting me open and fix.
Hmm.
And maybe he's the better doctor, cut for cut, right? I don't know, but I would never go back. I would never recommend someone go to someone like that. And when you have the battle of what hospital am I going to go to? I'm in Orange County. There's a lot of them, but I'm going to check in my network and find out like I'm going to get my eyes fixed, right? I didn't just pick a random doctor. I'm like, I looked around and I'm like, how do you know what a good doctor is for getting your eyes fixed? And so that's part of this whole AI thing, is like, that doesn't give you better bedside manner. And if you learn how to slow down and take care of it, look, you got to make money, you got to move fast and all
Hmm.
that. But, you know, it makes a difference. I don't want to go back to UCI's eye clinic because I wasn't happy with what I did. So I left. I walked out on surgery day. I'm like,
Yeah.
nope, not happening.
Yeah. The general problem is that we're fed a whole bunch of measurements, numbers, metrics, scientism. That's not a
Hmm.
that's not a nice word. That's a
Right.
making fun of people who try to be scientific when they're not
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
Economists love it a lot, but we're fed a whole bunch of this and told that we can make optimal decisions and look at the numbers and compare things and all this other stuff rather than trust our gut and
Yeah.
develop a gut that can feel these things, right? That we can
Hmm.
trust.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of in the find out phase on scientism and measurement and
Hmm.
overdoing all that stuff. Education's another one. Of course, Trump wants to get rid of the Department of Education, and that is that is making people ridiculously angry.
Yeah.
But when you look at AI in education, hey, Cattail, uh, when you look at AI in education, and people are already lining up to figure out how to measure the impact of an LLM chatbot on education. And it's like,
Mhm.
you're talking about kids who, it's like they're bored in school. They don't want to sit in school. They want to do recess. They're looking forward to soccer. They're looking forward to playing video games. The last thing they care about is whether they're using AI or whether they're using an actual real book that's held in their
Yeah.
hands. You think it's all important to them that they, like everything's labeled STEM, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we get into these, of course, if you want to sell anything to education, you have to have your product basically scientifically qualified with studies that, of course, you
Right.
pay for to come up with the right conclusions, because it's the only way
Yeah.
it's ever going to get done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a lot of bullshit,
There's so many
and
gadgets in
yeah,
education now. There are
there
so many
are.
gadgets.
There
Yeah.
are, and they all, what, they all have studies behind them that show how effective they are, and yet here
Yeah.
we are, 2025, a third of our third graders can't read. How's that?
Hmm.
How's that work, Pete? Where's the?
I don't know. I don't know what the answer
Yeah,
to that is.
it's a mess. It's an
Yeah.
absolute
Yeah.
mess.
And quite often, a big red rubber ball is all you need to get boys to focus in class, but they have to run around and kick the shit out of that ball. And what's a big rubber
Yeah.
ball? What's that thing cost? Does it cost $15 a piece, and it'll never run out? Like,
Dude,
yeah.
everything I learned about managing people, I learned from training a dog. And
Yeah.
you have to give a job. You have to give a dog a job. Then, like Cesar Millan says, like the first thing is you got to drain the energy. Now, drain
Yeah,
their energy.
right.
Give them a
Uh-huh.
job. Give them a task. They'll be
Yeah.
a wonderful dog. It's that simple. They'll be a
Right.
wonderful
Yeah.
employee. They'll be a wonderful
Describing
student.
8-year-olds.
Yeah, I'm
These
describing
boys, yeah.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Get a bunch of Nerf swords, beat the shit out of each other for 5 minutes. I'll see you,
Yeah.
and then they'll get
There's-
back to algebra. But I
You know what's
mean,
hilarious? There's
All
no
right.
studies on that, Pete. Nobody wants to study that and put a metric on it. Yeah, we drained
You don't have to
energy
study-
24%, and their score increased 63%. Right? No, nobody's going to do that.
Yeah. I like the study. We're getting a little off topic here, but I like the studies when they're like, kids need to go to school later. Oh, why is that?
Yeah.
Well, because they're so tired when they come to school. Like, you know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. They're not
Yeah.
going to be like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed any more than they
Right.
are now. Like,
Right. They're going to
they're
actually
gonna stay up
watch
later.
David Letterman rather than fall asleep during
Yeah.
David Letterman. Yeah, I get it. I know. I was that kid. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Oh my
Pete,
gosh. Okay, so yeah.
One word I've used, as long as anybody who's known me in AI, is delight. That AI, if AI is delighting you, it's doing the right thing. And what I don't mean is to stretch the meaning of delight to be satisfying this this parameter, this requirement, checking off these boxes or whatever else. I really mean that feeling in your soul of, damn, this is cool, right? It's like if you're getting the damn, this is cool, you're using it right. If you're getting the, well, I did this 10% more efficiently than before. I've been able to cut 4 employees and 6 contracts because I incorporated this AI system or whatever. That's not delight. That's checking boxes, right?
Yeah.
Focus on delight. Okay, I can make scratch biscuits with my air fryer. That's effing delightful, right?
Yeah.
I have a story I can read with my kid. It's about their dog. Like, that's delightful, right?
Yeah.
I have a I don't know. I'm writing a book about what are you writing a book about right now, Pete? My mind blanked.
Well, I'm writing an article for a mini story, a short story, maybe a novella, about a private detective in LA just after the fires. And so it's a classic Stephen J. Cannell type LA detective story.
Okay, so that's cool. I've written 5 versions of some scene, or I've had it write 5 versions of some scene, and it's given me an idea about what I want to write. That's truly delightful.
That's how I started it. I wrote in the style of Stephen J. Cannell, give me an 80s era thing with these characters in it, and then it got me going. I almost instantly took an off ramp, but it filled the page with words, which got me going in the right direction, kind of taught me the format that I thought I knew. And I'm like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about this device, but I was off to the races, right? And I haven't been back to that model since then. And so, it was, it's a pretty cool little thing. So almost every single word written is written by me, right? But the
Right.
inspiration and the page filling part, the brainstorming part, a lot of that was skipped because I've watched a bunch of those shows, and it taught me the format that I needed.
Right. And how might you do that before, before what you might do is you might get some buddies together to drink some beer. They
Yeah.
don't have any good ideas because they've never thought about this. You have to like, oh,
Mhm.
that's a great idea, Brad. That's wonderful. Man, you really sparked this in me. You know what? The AI doesn't require that. That's the cool thing. You don't have to
Right.
tell it, hey,
Yeah.
great job. It doesn't need that.
Yeah.
It
Well,
might
and the
do a
blank
bad
page
job and it
problem can go away.
doesn't need you to pretend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say that I'm an English lit teacher, right? And I'm trying
Yeah.
to AP English lit. Oh my
Uh-huh.
goodness, right? We have so many demands on our time because AP students do so much better. All right.
Uh-huh.
So it seems to me that you could use AI in the classroom as like a way to kind of marry the process. Because one of the things about getting kids to read shit is like getting to read it at all, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, because you can fake your way. I'm just sorry, you can fake your way through an AP English class. You really can,
Sure.
because a lot of this stuff is known. There's cliff notes. You can watch a movie. There's a lot of ways to get around the hard work of actually reading it. But it seems to me like AI might be a useful tool to, have your kids go through and develop, read the book, and then I want you to develop, like I like in between quills. Give me an alternate storyline off of this character, and come
Mm-hmm.
back, and then show me what AI did, and then show me what you did. Show me your work, and then I think there's a good process there of like getting the reading done, breaking it down so you can understand the story, and taking some and using AI to your advantage so you can learn that skill, but also, you know, doing a little creative writing yourself. What do you think?
Pete,
How am I
Pete,
doing?
you knew the kids who always wanted the answer. Like, what's the
Yeah,
answer? Right. And
yeah,
you were smart enough yourself that there were things that just required your thinking and your reflection, your engagement with them, that you had to think and engage and whatever before you could come up with an answer. You learned to be
right.
thoughtful. That's probably the
Yeah,
most important thing that you learn in school. It's not the answers, but how to engage with material and come up with your own interpretation of it, come up with your own answer.
right.
That's what, if you're a teacher, that's what you're hoping that your kids do. But you have this whole contingent of kids. What's the answer? I'm going to memorize the answer. Totally not the point, right?
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't really care whether the thing is giving me bad answers, good answers, whatever else. If the
Right.
tool makes me more engaged with the material so that I'm doing some work, just thinking about it and whatever else, and then I'm producing something that that shows this thinking, it's good.
Yeah.
If the tool is babysitting me, if it's Barney the dinosaur on my TV or whatever, and it's babysitting me, keeping me quiet, well, that has its purpose, but probably not a great tool.
Yeah.
So
I'd love
that's
to
how I put
see.
it.
I'd love to teach a creative writing class where I apply some of that. Like I want you to read whatever, pick a book.
Hmm.
Give me a good fiction book that you'd like me to use for this example.
Oh, me? Fiction
Yeah.
book? Okay, here's a good book of fiction. How about the budget of the United States of America? That's a great work of fiction. Wait, great work of fiction, as we
Okay.
found out
Yeah.
lately.
All right. So we'll assign Hunt for Red October, right?
Yeah,
And we'll do
sure,
one for the ladies next round. And
sure.
then just it's creative writing class. And it's again, like I want you to use AI to come up with a sequel, an in-betweenquel, a prequel, or whatever alternate story in this universe. And then you ready? You got to get up and pitch it in front of your peers, and it's peer grading.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
great would
that's the
that be?
part that's
Yeah.
really the part that's important. It's not that you've memorized the story or you know all
Right.
like you find these people who know everything about Star Wars and they're like, well, this latest Star Wars, it's
Oh my
inconsistent
God.
with what Han Solo ate with
Yeah.
Luke Starbucker at the
Hmm.
at the open air whatever on planet whatever, right? I
Right.
mean, come on. Okay.
Yeah.
This is not the point. The point is not memorizing this like it's verses of the Bible. That's like stupid. The point is just enjoy the general story, the flow of the story, and something else comes along that kind of fits in, and you can kind of see how it fits in. You can see that you can be delighted by the callbacks. You can be delighted by what you remember from this that applies here, or even what doesn't work. Right? That you're
Hmm.
an active thinker about this, an active participant in it. That's what makes it a great story. But that's the
Yeah.
kind of thing,
Yeah.
those are the kinds of things you want to teach people. And then, can I mechanically write these words out so it makes sense or whatever else? It's probably not terribly important until you don't have things that can do it. And that's a good skill to be able to fall back on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. What else do you need to cover? I mean, obviously, we want to make sure we promote paid. people can get a hold of you at your
So
website, or where do you want them to go?
So I think I'd like people to go to bradhutchings.com. That would be good.
Okay.
I will have stuff that rolls out there. I will actually have a product offering where I will stick all the things you need in a box. Yes, it will be more expensive than going to Amazon and figuring it out yourself. But if you don't know what it is, how are you going to figure it out, right? But it'll all be installed, and I will help you get this running on your network. If you want something, like a serious thing, like a Mac Studio or a Mac Mini running this, that runs a bigger model, I can help you with that too. I have all the software, I have all the know-how to do that.
Is it going to tell me, oh, you know what? Why don't we talk about something besides thermonuclear war? Is it going to like wave me off when I want to talk about something it doesn't like?
So these are private models. Running them out of, again, this goes back to a lot of things we talked about. I say don't talk to it in chat mode. Use it in completion mode. You get around all the sensory BS that everybody thinks is important. And just get some knowledge out of it. That's the thing. It's not always going to be right, but neither is your friend who knows everything. He's not always right either. He's right enough that he can kind of help you on with things.
Yeah. Like when they talk about Star Wars and whoever did the whatever, I like to say, didn't he sprain his ankle once? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, then it's all make believe, because of course someone sprained their ankle once. It's a giant 8-foot Wookiee.
Right? Didn't Harrison Ford almost maim himself in one of those scenes filming it or something? Yeah. Was that Indiana Jones? Or was that one of the later Indiana Jones remake, or was that the Jeep commercial? Yeah. I mean, what is it? Yeah, Pete. I don't know. I think what I would tell everybody is these new technologies are not about. They're not about solving everybody's problems. They're not oracles. They're not, oh, this is so much better than us. And that's what they really do is they fill gaps. It's like, hey, I need a recipe for this. Okay, here's a gap filler. It's right here. It's easy. It's cheap.
Yeah, right.
I need to understand, basically how does banking work? I have an interview with a bank next week. How does this particular segment of banking work? I can have it write stories, and I can read them, and then I can kind of internalize that, and I'll probably go AC interview because somebody else doesn't know squat about it. They're just showing up because it pays well or because it matches their degree. Right?
Yeah.
So that's that paid thing. I'm gonna steal that from you. That's brilliant, man.
Hey, yeah,
I like it.
I love it. Good. Well, then there you go. Use that. Yeah, that's for you to use. Just if it ever blows up, it'll just be we know who named it.
Yeah,
and it was like Twain.
Right.
That's a great name for something,
Twain is a good name for something. I forget what it is, but it is a tech thing that I've
technology without an interesting name.
I bet you that's what it stood for.
Yeah.
And I think it's used for scanners of all things. Now
that
I sort of
scanners
remember.
and printers, right? Yeah, right.
Wow. How about that?
Yep. There you go.
Know what
and I'm sure there's some kind of legitimate name you can make out. Like the military loves an acronym or a partial acronym. So there you go.
Yes.
Paid. If we get nothing else from this, everybody should get a hold of Brad. BradHutchings.com. The link is in there. I think I typed it correctly, but my eyes don't work very good right now. So
it looks good to me, Pete. Yeah.
The thing about Brad that I'll say to you guys is he's an expert in all this stuff. And so if you're like, I don't know, we talked about a bunch of silly examples, that kind of thing. But if you have something that's practical, get a hold of Brad, because what he does, he hears you out and tries to go, okay, what are we going to work on? Like, let's say you're doing wargaming scenarios with sheriff's departments as they do exercises. Brad's got a solution for that. Whatever it is, talk him through what it is that you're doing. How do we do this? How do we make better decisions about how we deploy AI? That's all stuff that Brad is great at. So he's a good friend and someone who you can count on to at least give you some better insight on what's going to be possible and what's practical, and how do we not spend $1 million in something when maybe we can do it not for cheaper, but get the same thing done for a more practical application in a more reasonable kind of budget. How am I doing, Brad? That pretty good?
One more thing I'd add there is I am a sell what's available today kind of person. So I don't want to have to invent whole new technology in order to solve your problem. If we have to invent whole new technology, well, let's push your problem down a few months, see what's available then. But if we have what's available today to solve your problem, let's use that and let's do that. Let's do it well.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody, this is the Brick It Town Show, as you all know. I will see you all later. Brad, thank you very much. Hang in there, and I'll say bye to you in a second. Everybody else,
all right,
do what you do.